I will call the February 2nd meeting of the Irmo County Council to order, and I will recognize Councilman Walker to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Lord, bless this council and the decisions we make tonight, that we do things in your eyes, in your wants, and your will. And also give UConn one more chance to play the Gamecocks down here. Amen.
Amen. Next item on the agenda is the reading of the minutes of January 19th. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes as written?
So moved.
And a second. Any discussion? All in favor then of the minutes to be approved as written, do so with show of hands. Next item is administrative briefing. Ms. Brown, anything you'd like to add?
Only about the Chamber Gala, Mr. Mayor. We need to know by the end of the week. So anyone interested in going to the Irmo Chamber of Commerce Gala on the 26th of February, please let me know so I can let Carrie know and we'll decide how much space we need.
Okay. Any other questions of Ms. Brown on the briefing?
Yeah, Mr. Brown, did you write Link Incorporated a check?
They got a check, yes, sir.
They did get a check?
They did get a check.
How much did you write the check for?
The check was written for $1,000.
$1,000? What 3 council people voted for that?
I got a signed letter from Mr. Luther, that's all. He was happy with it.
But I'm saying, what 3 council people agreed to pay him $1,000?
Myself and I'm trying to remember. 4 of us. Yeah, that's right. 3 of us. Yeah, 3 of us. Yeah. No.
Who was it? Yourself and who?
Myself, Kathy, and Mark.
Okay. So you paid $1,000 for the website?
For the domain names.
The domain names.
For domain names?
Yeah, not for the website.
Any other questions, Mr. Brown? Seeing none. Next item is the report from Mr. Dennis on the flood. So I will turn it over.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Mayor, you weren't referring to the great flood, were you?
Yeah, this flood report, I guess, I better say, that we had done.
Okay. Does everyone on council have a copy of the document? Okay. Well, we did a comprehensive study of that entire watershed. As some of you may recall, there was a few houses that had significant flooding continually, and we looked into that and really studied the entire drainage basin. And I've got with me here tonight Jason Outlaw, an engineer with Dennis Corporation. He did a lot of the heavy lifting on this, and I want to commend him for, I think this is an excellent report.
Jason, you the hydrologist?
Yes, sir.
Come up here.
Yeah, he may need to help out the old guy. And after studying it and looking at various alternatives, and again, let me digress a little bit. We did, what is a flood study? We go back and try to model what different storm events cause, as far as flooding and height of water, where water ponds, and we model it for different types of storm events: 2-year storms, 10 years, 100-year events, and those are just statistical events. Most recently, the flood in October was well over that as far as total rainfall. Intensity is another thing. Don't get confused with overall rainfall and intensity. You can have flooding As easily with a small storm, just as with a big one, the intensity of the rain that falls is concentrated in a short period of time. So a lot of people can get that confused. Some people ask me, well, why didn't my property flood in the big October flood? And the answer to that, if you'll look on the data that's now posted on many websites, including the National Weather Service and others, NOAA, you'll see that it was a long-term rainfall event that hit basically up the I-26 corridor. And it just eventually reached a point where the main paths for water flow are just, totally inundated, and that's when we experienced the flooding. Very different than what you would commonly call a thunderstorm in the summer, which may only last, 30 minutes at best, but could have significant flooding. So after analyzing the system, modeling it for various storms, various rainfall events, we figured out what the problem was. We talked to a lot of the landowners, property owners, neighbors, residents, and they also provided valuable information. And then we looked at how to solve it using some, good old-fashioned engineering techniques. Basically, this is an old subdivision that the drainage system has kind of been a hodgepodge as the development has developed, and that area that was once forested is now completely urbanized with developed lots, rooftops, paved driveways, streets. And over time, you've got ditches that have become piped, and some of those pipes were not put in properly, were not sized properly, so they're constricting the flow. You've got vegetation in some areas that hasn't been maintained, so it's also choking the water flow. Getting down to the crux of the study, we found that alternate 3 in your report, page 17, although it is the most expensive solution, it is the best long term. It will solve the problem. It will eliminate the flooding in several locations, and it will be a permanent fix. 1 and 2, you're really not getting your money's worth. So how do you fund it? Well, of course, we included some ideas in the proposal. I think you're going to go to the county first. That's great. If they say no again, let me know. I'd be glad to help. Talk to DOT. They have transportation enhancement grants available. We've done several projects with that funding source. Richland County has its penny. I've been to most of those meetings. Some of your fellow towns have received some funding, Blythewood, Forest Acres, or at least they're asking for funding. But that's in the report, and I think all of those are viable funding sources if you don't succeed with the county. So I'd love to answer any questions you may have, technical, non-technical.
Your opinion on FEMA hazard mitigation in this case?
Yes, sir. Since this has been an ongoing problem well before the October storm, I don't think it's an option, personally.
Did this,
Just because it was pre-existing, if you want to compare it to medical.
did this system meet standards when it was first constructed? I was interested in where you had 2 36-inch pipes running into another 36-inch
Yeah,
pipe, and water's like electricity, you don't do
Right,
that.
you don't do that.
And then there was one where the drains on the street were, I think, supposed to be 65 feet apart,
And they were
54 feet
Yes,
in one
sir.
case.
What I've seen this over and over again in the older neighborhoods. Construction occurred over a long period of time, and you may even have different developers, different zoning requirements, whatever. And then some things were just done, no one knew about it. Case in point, 2 36-inch pipes going to one. I don't think anyone in any capacity, other than maybe somebody who's trying to save some money, would do that. But good point, and obviously, I don't believe that was ever permitted properly.
The pictures,
Yes, ma'am.
especially of the ditches,
Yes, ma'am.
which I rarely get in,
Mhm.
that you can't see those things, but it illustrated the problem as well as the report, just seeing all the things and the brick and the debris and
Sure.
all. No wonder
Yeah.
It was obvious why we had a problem, so you did very well.
Jason, you walked all of those, I believe, and weren't some of the culverts also, about half full with silt and?
Yeah, there's some that are plugged with yard debris and other stuff that's just fallen from trees and has made their way back there. So there's a lot of maintenance that can be done to help mitigate smaller events, but ultimately, to solve all the problems, there will be some major upgrades needed.
I understand.
You mentioned that there was some solutions. Some of this stuff is like a permanent fix, but they have to be maintained afterwards. In particular, the ditches in the back of the houses, where there are like debris and stuff like that in there. Is it the responsibility of the homeowners to maintain those ditches, or is it the responsibility of the town, or is it the county, or what? Because we're getting 5 different stories over the years.
If I could answer that, Councilman Walker, it just really goes back to the legal deed and land description in the courthouse records. So if you do a search on that particular property or that ditch, and you'll find out if there is an easement by the county, the town, or the HOA, or there may not be one at all. But typically part of the acceptance process of subdivisions is the county, in order for them to take over the streets, would also take over the drainage easements. So I would bet most of the drainage easements are responsibility of the county. Not all of them, but.
This is Richland County? Is this Richland County?
Yes, this portion falls in Richland County.
And all the roads are in Richland County system except for one, and it was labeled as local road. Private road actually is what it is.
And this subdivision was in the county until '86
When you annexed it, yes, sir.
Part of the town.
Right. And yeah, very, very common.
What do you think would be the best way to solve it? DOT?
Well, the department has available funds called, the old term was Transportation Enhancement, and with the new highway bill, they renamed it TAP, which is an abbreviation for Transportation Area Improvement, something like that. And I've used a lot of those funds. They come in $400,000 chunks, and you apply for them. I've already talked with Commissioner Hardy, your highway commissioner, and he can't guarantee anything, but he certainly would be willing to help the town of Irmo with that. And so that's a great source there. And you've got, of course, the Penny, the Richland Penny. These are all Richland, county streets. Jason, what were some of the other sources we had? We listed a number of them.
The Richland would probably be the least likely to happen, right?
Well, they're going to have, a lot of, it's too early to tell right now with the program, but my experience in a lot of county programs, and we worked on a lot of them, is over time some projects fall out. Either the public doesn't want them after they start going to the public meetings, or there's a permitting issue and it just can't be built economically. So that will happen. And because you have this study now, you're ready to go. You, I think, are in a great position to lobby and leverage that report and get some funding. There is a number of options. I'm more than happy to work with Bob and pursue any one of them. On page 18 of your report, paragraph 5, potential funding sources. I just mentioned SCDOT. Every county receives C funds, which are the county transportation funds, and a lot of counties appropriate a portion of those funds to be spent in the local municipalities. So that would be, and you can go to the local, there's a CTC meeting for Richland County every month. You can go to one of those meetings and ask for assistance. Richland County does have a stormwater capital improvement program. You could apply to that. As I mentioned, the penny tax. I don't believe town of Irmo has any projects currently with the penny, to my knowledge. We mentioned the FEMA flood mitigation assistant grants, that's through DNR. I don't think it's an option or a viable option due to the flood in October, but because this is, well, you can explain it better, Jason. What did the FEMA map show in one particular area?
The FEMA maps show that the flooding should be limited to the main channel, which is behind the ditch that's in between Charing Cross and Broad River Road. So it doesn't show it coming back up in the neighborhood. It's all for that floodplain. It doesn't come far enough in.
So because of that and the fact that that's not shown on the flood mapping, could allow FEMA to get involved in that capacity. There's some grant money through DHEC for non-point source discharges.
Oh, that's right. Did you look at the sewage discharge?
The overflows?
Right.
Yeah, there's...
Yeah, I would believe if you mitigate the flooding, then it would solve the sewage from, yeah.
Yeah.
So the pipes wouldn't overflow to allow the water to come out.
Okay.
So if you mitigate all the flooding, I think it handles that issue for water quality concerns.
So, and there's a program through DHEC for funding there. And then your typical CPG block grants, which are $500,000, that could easily qualify. And then there are some state loan programs. Those are loans, of course.
So how do we get you to help us go to the next step of this? I mean, as far as, should we go after the DOT end first, or the county end first, or what would you recommend as our examples? I mean, or both?
Yeah, I would say both. And these days it's all about cooperation and participation.
Right.
And as long as the DOT and the county see that you folks are putting your money in, which you have already, and I would commend you for doing that. I think they're willing to help. So, and we'd be glad to help in any way we can to facilitate, getting the paperwork done, submitted. It's not that, it's paperwork, but the report's already done, so a lot of this would just be referring to the report.
I wanted to ask, I had a couple of questions on some of this stuff. The 2-year storm, what is a 2 year as opposed to a 10-year, 25?
They're basically a statistical average of how often those storms occur. So there's a certain amount of rainfall that will occur within a 2-year span. And just because it's called a 2-year storm, you could have 3 of them in one season. Doesn't necessarily mean, for example, the 1,000-year flood will happen once every 1,000 years. It's just that storm, you have 1,000th of a chance to have it happen in 1 year.
So a 2-year would be something that would occur more often than a 10-year, and a 10-year would occur more often than a 25.
That's correct.
So forth type thing. I'm going to find some of these questions I had on here just to make sure I understood. If I read some of this stuff, a lot of it refers to deferred maintenance, so to speak, stuff that hasn't been done. And I know from our past conversations with Richland County, and many years ago, I can't remember if DOT was there on Mr. Chinesky's porch or not, when it was raining and flooding, and they basically said, we don't do upgrades, we do maintenance, that's all we do, We don't do improvements, we don't do nothing else but maintenance. But based on this, it looks like $200,000 of deferred maintenance that hasn't been done with all these clogged pipes and that kind of stuff. But if I'm reading this, if they were to go clean out every pipe, do everything that they're supposed to do up to the alternative one, then there's a good chance there still can be 2-year flooding.
That's correct.
Okay. But if they do alternative 2 or alternative 3, then that gets eliminated to a certain degree. But I couldn't understand the difference in 2 and 3. They didn't seem to be that much money difference, but 3 was like 100% guarantee, and 2 was like a waste of money.
Yeah, explain that, Jason.
Well, the two wasn't necessarily a waste of money. It was they're about the same and they will accomplish the same goals. It's more of a aesthetically pleasing. You would have large ditches where you currently have pipes. So instead, you'd have larger culverts going into roads. You'd have ditches adjacent to people's property, and it would just be more aesthetically pleasing to have just larger pipes underground. To where you don't
Mayor, I think as those lots got developed over time, the ditches that were there were then piped, and they were done in a haphazard fashion. And those pipes in limited areas became choke points. In fact, one area in particular, the pipes they're not at the right elevation because they hit rock, and they could, I guess they, decided, well, it's down deep enough, but they needed to go much deeper. But if you take out those pipes now and you have a back slope where you can mow and it looks aesthetically pleasing in somebody's yard, you're then going to have to go and get permission from that landowner, and I doubt you're going to get permission.
Right.
And then your only option then will be condemnation, and that would be the last thing you want to do. I do a lot of condemnation work for DOT, and that's no one wins there. So that is the primary difference between 2 and 3 is taking those old pipes out that are choke points and leaving them and reverting them back to a open ditch.
And my other, I guess, comment, question, concern would be if these citizens have been paying taxes to Richland County for years and they're supposed to be maintaining it and they're not, why would the town apply for a grant if we got to come out of pocket? And I think the county can apply for those grants, or the county can get those CTC funds. I mean, we had a road here in Irmo years ago that we asked DOT or CTC to pay for, and they refused. I don't know that they've ever spent any of their money in our town. My guess is, are we going to get any of those seed funds? Are we going to get any of that penny? Are we going to get? I don't think so.
I use this answer a lot. I'm an engineer, not a politician.
So I'm guessing that if we're not going to get any money from them, then the best we can do is say, hey, y'all said you'd maintain it, y'all maintain it. Clean it up, fix it, and that's the best we can hope for. Unless we want to spend money to do these improvements, or get a grant, but I don't know.
Or if we ran someone to be Richland County Commissioner that would listen to us.
Yeah, but there's still more of them down there that are fighting over that money in their areas. And
Well, if you have a relationship with Richland County, you can certainly go to them and ask them for this sort of stuff. And you can probably get it because you have a more personal relationship with these people.
I think we all ought to go in mass.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. We need to have a relationship with the council or whoever's in charge of that, that area. But, I think the next step is to either employ, Dennis Engineering or work with them
I think we should get Brian to write a good letter and send this to them and ask them for alternative 3. And see what they say, and if they don't do alternative 3, ask them if they'll at least do alternative 1. If nothing else, do maintenance, clean it up, get it, but try to get them to do number 3, which,
right.
see what they say.
3 is, what you said, a more permanent fix, right?
And I think DOT, I think they're more agreeable to do what they need to do, but if I look at our roads and go, where are you gonna get the money? I can almost imagine their answer. They ain't got it. So I think they might be more willing to jump in there, but whether they got the funds, they might tell us they were ready for it to be done if we pay for it, which I think once we pay for it, we'll be paying for everything in this town for years because I know we fell for it. But I would say Bob needs to send a letter and send it to DOT and a copy to Richland County and ask to do alternative 3, but if nothing
Same
else.
time, Richland County.
If I may, I'd recommend, with Richland, hit them at two, go after it in two different angles.
Right.
The penny is one funding source, and then C funds is a constant
Right.
source of funds that they receive through the gasoline tax. And, once you get on the list, and, eventually, hopefully they'll fund it or a portion of it.
And it's an election year.
But, we'll see. But I think it does at least show them they haven't done what they've always told us that they do, which is maintain it. Yeah. Any more questions?
Dan, can we break this on your, what page it says your second exhibit 2, existing storm drain structures?
What page is that?
This is on the
Exhibit
picture,
Okay.
exhibit 2, existing storm pages.
Yeah, I have it in front of me, Exhibit 2.
You see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You see how you got that blue line, which is showing the pipe and the ditches? I guess the ditches are the ones with the little jagged lines in there, and the actual drains are the ones with straight lines.
Yes, sir, that's the
Okay.
water path. Flow
Right.
path.
If we take that in sections and do different sections, or have it broken up into different sections, is it possible to do one section at a time without doing the other section? And get some results?
Yes, I think if you were to focus where the two 36-inch pipes come back together, and you fix the portion from there to the ditch behind Mr. Chinesky's house,
Right.
that would serve a lot of good.
I mean, if you do just that one section,
Mm-hmm.
and then if we get more money or get more investment, and then do the other sections?
Yes, that would help. That would help mitigate that portion, and then cleaning the ditches behind the house across the street.
Yeah.
It'd almost be like the road network. If the roads were all bad, you would, and you
Yeah.
didn't have the funding, pave one road this year, do another road next year.
Correct.
So same thing would apply with the drainage system.
Okay.
We would prioritize it and hit the choke points first with whatever funds you had.
So if you could take this picture and divide it up and say, okay, this is a choke point behind Mr. Uniski's house that needs to be fixed right away. That needs to go first. And that will cost $100,000, whatever, to do that. And then this is the next section, across Charming Cross behind Broad River. I don't know what the next one is, but whatever the next logical one would be,
Mm-hmm.
that would be the next logical piece to fix and then to work on. But that way, we'll know, as a council, we'll know that, okay, we're gonna apply for $500,000 from C funds or whatever, but if we only get 200,000 for that section,
Mm-hmm.
is what we can apply that to. Would that be something we could?
Yeah, that's a great idea, and most projects these days are broken up into phases,
Right.
just because it's rare that you get all the money
Right.
you request. So, it seems like we have phase 1, 2, and 3 now for everything we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna go for the whole thing, but I mean, if we just get a portion of that, we can make that a phase 1 or phase 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And would that be something we would get to kind of choose, or would that be something the county would say, we're gonna start here and do this first, second, and third, or rely on them to do better? Or,
Well, my personal feeling was, I know we work with the county, just like we work with you folks for over the last 10 years, and, I think if you put two engineers in the room, they're gonna agree that the top priority would be those two 36-inch pipes. And, yeah, so I think that could be worked out, not a problem.
Okay.
all righty, any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bobby, got your?
You're gonna go for the whole thing, right, Bob? The full 303, what is it, 94,000?
All you do is say no.
Exactly.
485,000.
All righty. Next thing is amendments to the agenda. Any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, next item is consideration of communications. Any communications? Seeing none. Next item is presentation by citizens. This is where anyone who would like to address council on any item that's on the agenda may do so at this time. All we ask is you give us your name and address for the record and the item you'd like to speak to. Anyone who'd like to address council?
Good evening. My name is Debbie Thomas. I'm a member of the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club, and I'd like to speak to the first reading of Ordinance 16-02 to amend the Irmo Okra Strut Commission's recommendation. We have been told that you're going to be considering once again charging us for the fees that are often enacted to people who are participating in Okra Strut. As I think all of you know, this was addressed at the December meeting, and the ordinance that was enacted chose not to charge us any fees at that time. The Okra Strut was founded in 1973 by the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club to help raise money to build the Irmo Branch Library. The 7th annual Okra Strut in October of 1980 was co-sponsored by the town of Irmo and the club based on the conditions outlined in the Memorandum of Agreement and Understanding. Beginning that year, the club was not charged any booth or electrical fee, rental fees related to the Okra Strut, and that has continued. Now, in the first reading of the new ordinance, there has been, from what we understand, a recommendation to change both fees and charge us. Did the Okra Strut Commission recommend changing the club booth rental and electrical fees? Where did this recommendation come from? Could I ask that question?
We'll be discussing that when we get to it. Wait, we're reading it.
If not, we're a bit confused because we thought the ordinance that was passed in December, which was just a few months ago, addressed this situation. As you all know, the Okra Strut is one of our club's largest fundraisers. It takes many volunteers and partners and businesses to make this event successful. And as you also know, in 2015, we had rain. And we had 29 members and 276 volunteer hours to make this happen for us, and still we only grossed $6,229. I understand the festival itself, though, made $20,000, if I'm not mistaken. It makes me wonder, should the club perhaps be asking the Okra Strut for a percentage of the profits, since we're the founders? Besides donating to the Irmo Branch Library, we also donate to Camp Chemo, Canines for Veterans, Sharing God's Love, the Honor Flight, and Sister Care, as well as providing high school scholarships, to name just a few of our things that we contribute to. And our club has also given over $500 to the Irmo Arbor Day. All these things benefit our community. None of us are paid. This is all strictly volunteer. We're a 501c3, so we're not making any money that goes in anyone's pocket. Therefore, we're not a vendor. Since we're not a for-profit business, like the vendors, we're perhaps in a special area. At this point in time, we are asking the town council to allow the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club to continue to serve the community without fees or charges being assessed for our Okra Strut booth. We would like to participate. We would like to participate as we have been for many, many years, and we'd like to have the previous ordinance upheld. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is second reading of ordinance 1601 to amend the Irmo zoning ordinance, section 2-2, where we are changing the neighborhood commercial, what is allowed in the neighborhood commercial and what is not allowed in the neighborhood commercial. Is there a second reading of 1601? A motion for second reading of 1601? And a second. Second. what we're doing is, we used to not allow gas pumps and certain other type things in neighborhood commercial. We changed the zoning to allow it, and now we're going back and taking that allowance out and no longer allowing gas pumps and different other type businesses in that neighborhood commercial. And just going back to the way it was originally. But any more discussion?
That's not quite true. We changed our NAEPS code, we adopted the NAEPS code, which allowed the neighborhood commercial areas to have gasoline stations and gas pumps. It wasn't like we changed it to allow it. It was when we adopted those codes, it was automatically part of that.
No, that, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
But I looked at the map and the zoning map, and there's about 20-something parcels that qualify as neighborhood commercials. Out of work out at 20-something parcels, there's only 2 basically vacant parcels that would potentially could be used as gas stations, but it's not big enough. It's not, you don't have the setting, the footprint to do it at the neighborhood commercial. Put a gas station in that neighborhood commercial parcels. My objection to this is that it's, taking on a sledgehammer to a problem that really doesn't exist. It's just simply to go back and it looks like it's going back to reverse things that you lost on, that the mayor lost on it when he was, when we had last council. I don't really see necessarily needed for that. You can make it conditionally. If you want to change it, make it conditional, and then have to come to council and get approval on it. That's something that I could go along with. But as far as moving it completely for 2 parcels, it's just totally unnecessary.
That's not what I remember, but you could be right, because I'm probably the oldest one sitting up here, so memory could be going. But I remember we changed it for mainly for one specific piece of land to add gas pumps. And along with the gas pumps, of course, the buried gas containers. And in that case, those containers were within 50 feet of a property line and 2 homes. The problem with that, I would hate to think I lived that close to that much gas because of things that happen or whatever. But the other thing is, almost immediately, the value of those 2 houses went down because they back up to gas pumps. It could have happened again if Blockbuster had had a little more land on St. Andrews Road. That could have been a gas station. And certainly, New Life Fitness, that could have easily been a gas station. I'm just grateful to St. Andrews Presbyterian for buying that piece of land.
That's what I'm saying. There's nothing empty. There's nothing available in neighborhood commercial, except for 2 parcels. Which
I think there's some on Broad River Road. It could be. I just don't like it. I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's economically a good idea. But I'm a homeowner type person, so I'm glad we're removing it.
I'll recognize you since you made a motion to or seconded or whatever, or made the motion.
Well, the same service station you're talking about, that opened up that corridor all the way to Lake Murray Boulevard, and that property's available. That's a large chunk of land that's available.
Where?
From Broad River,
Right.
past Jim Hudson, all the way around to Lake Murray Boulevard. That road was not there years ago.
Yeah, there's multiple tracks of.
You talk about that with the,
That land's for sale.
yeah, but that's general commercial. That's not neighborhood commercial.
Yeah.
They could put a gas station there right now with no objection at all. We're talking about neighborhood commercial.
I understand
And
that.
that's not neighborhood commercial, that's general commercial, so they can do it.
Well, there are
You have to change
There are
that zone.
residences behind the first
Right,
section
but
of
it's-
that property.
But there's a zone right now for that. You couldn't, if there
Couldn't
were,
stop it now.
right. I'm talking about where there's neighborhood commercial properties.
Well,
And I agree with you that Jim Hudson's, that little street there where Jim Hudson is, you probably don't want a truck stop there.
No,
But at the same time, it's zoned for a truck stop. I'm not saying I hope nobody buys and puts one there, but,
well, and as you go up Broad River Road, that property where the church is, that's now for sale. And across the street, there are several businesses which could one day close, and we'd have service stations may be backing up to everybody on Charing Cross. And I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate that. Remember all the hoodoo about the lights coming from Jim Hudson shining in the residential areas. Then you've got 10,000 gallons of gasoline underground? No, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of properties, all that property from the Friars Gate neighborhood sign all the way up to the businesses is neighborhood commercial.
That's why you would want to make it conditional.
Somebody could buy all of those. There's property up on Lake Mary Boulevard that backs up to Hill Creek that is neighborhood commercial, but right now somebody could buy it and put a 24-hour service station there, right next to that Walgreens. I think years ago when we passed this, there were 80-some or 90-some properties in town that were neighborhood commercial. There was probably 30 of them, whether they were occupied or not, that could be purchased and gathered together and done the same thing. Whether the property is vacant or not, I mean, somebody bought a service station over here on Broad River Road, and they're going to tear it down and put a bigger one. But it's general commercial, so if they're willing to tear down one service station and put another, I'm sure they're willing to tear down Salvation Army. That property there is neighborhood commercial. They could buy that, tear it down, and put a neighborhood commercial, put a gas station there.
That's why you would want to make it a conditional. As opposed to
I don't think you can make it conditional and send it to the council to vote on. That becomes a political thing, and I don't think that's going to fly too far. All the conditions have to be predetermined, or you can just put it back the way it was and say, no, we're not going to. We got general commercial areas that they can put a 24-hour service station in, and leave them to those areas there. That's what they're zoned for. But it wasn't something that we changed. It was not allowed in a next code, if I remember correctly.
No, we changed the NATE code, but then we had an ordinance to change the gas pump to allow it in the
To
neighborhood.
allow it in the
That's
next
correct.
code, yes. But it wasn't allowed in the next
No.
code when we adopted it. We
No.
didn't change it, yeah. But, any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor then of second reading of ordinance 1601, do so with show of hands. All opposed? Next item is new business. First reading of 1602 to amend the Irmo Town Code, Article 4, Boards and Commissions, Section 267, has to do with the Lake Mary Women's Club. And I will make a motion for first reading. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And let me address this, and that's why I made the motion, so I go first, and then we can talk about it. There is some confusion about what we did in December. What we did in December was change the ordinances that had to do with the obstruct on the running of it. One of those did say, and still does say, that the Lake Mary Women's Club can nominate somebody for the commission. That's still in there. What this ordinance right here does, number 267, it kind of repeats part of that. It says that they have the ability to sell the ochre, have exclusive right to sell ochre, which is in their agreement that we also say. So that's still in place. Number D and E, which gives them the right to select their choice, that's still in another thing. And then E is the part about having the voting seat. That's still part of the other ordinance. So those three things are already in some other document. All this does, and this came up in 2015, looks like May is when we finally voted it. When we changed over from the percentage to the flat fee, that's when we first changed all that stuff to a flat fee, sent out the application for them to pay or whatever like we did to everybody else. This came up last year, and council at that time decided we're just going to make an ordinance and put all this stuff in it. We did, and it passed. I was opposed to it. I don't know who else it was. I just remember it passed. The one thing I have a problem with in here, they have the agreement that says they have the exclusive right to sell ochre. They have the agreement that says they can nominate somebody, and they have it in the other agreement that says they can have exclusive right or first selection or choice of booths. The one item on here, C, is Lake Mary Women's Club will not be charged any participation fee and allowed to keep 100% of the revenues during Oak Strut Festival. I don't think we should allow that. I do think that if we want to allow any or certain or approved, and whatever that condition is, I think there needs to be some criteria that says an approved 501(c)(3). And that approval would be something to the effect of somebody that's in the town, somebody that's in School District 5, somebody that is going to give their money, spend their money, use their money, whatever, on people in this area, then we will give them a discounted rate on the booth. Maybe on their participation fee too. That's up for discussion. I do not have a problem with allowing a 501(c)(3) to have a better rate than a for-profit vendor. But we also, at the same time, are trying to turn this Oak Strut around to where it is either one, breaking even, or two, actually making money, so that it can be a fundraiser. And it's hard for us to raise money and have a fundraiser when we're giving money away. Not a whole lot. And at the same time, I think it's been mentioned, $6,000 what they made last year in Badria. I've looked at those things for years past, when in a good year they made 10. What we're talking about is a small amount. I don't see, in my mind, why somebody would have a argument to pay a small fee or a participation fee to be a part of it, when it's also going to help the Oak Strut stay solid. And I also feel like that if we going to allow one 501(c)(3) to have a special rate, privilege rate, whatever it may be, I think if a church or somebody else comes to us and says they want to sell pies to make money, and we charge them and not this group, then I think we're setting ourselves up with some liable issues. That's why I think we just need to get rid of this. It's already in the regular ordinance about their ability to nominate somebody to serve on a commission. It's already in the other agreement that they have the exclusive right to sell over, and they have the right to choose the booth, have a first choice of booth. The only thing that's not in their agreement, and I know there's some argument and confusion on a certain clause in there about the money and yours to them, but that's not part of that agreement, that they get a free thing. So that's why I put it on here, so that we as a new council can decide if we want to continue this, if we want to change this, if we want to, in my opinion, fix it, which is take it out of here. We don't need an ordinance that says all that. We don't even need a new ordinance that says that they get a discounted rate. It just needs to be a policy. I think we can ask the commission to make some recommendation, but still it comes upon us as the elected people to make that decision. The Oak Strut actually belongs to the town of Irmo. It is managed, so to speak, by the commission. But it's just like any other business. You have an owner, you have a manager. Managers are given certain responsibility and certain authority, and the owner has to make the final decision. That's something that I think we need to come back to. I think this gets rid of some liability issues that I think we have from this, and then we come back.
Liability issues?
Yeah, then we come back at a future date, whether it's the next meeting or the meeting after that, and come up with something. I have no objection to outdraw something that says, here's what I think, and then we can amend that, change that, vote it up, vote it down, whatever. But what I would recommend is that here's the three things. There is a participation fee based on how many items you sell as far as food. And if it's less than 3, Bob, I think, is it like $100 for that participation?
He didn't hear.
I don't think
He didn't hear.
If you're selling less than 3 items as a vendor, is it $100 for participation?
150 was our lowest one.
150.
That's correct.
So it'd be 150 for the participation. It'd be $200 a space.
And then it went to 250 at 5 items. So it was 5
But
items.
for the booth space,
$200.
$200 a space, and then $100 if they want electricity
That's correct.
per space, or is that just? So if they were paying full price, they'd pay $200 for a booth. And if they had 2 booths, they'd pay $400, and they pay $100 for electricity, and then they pay
Yes.
$150 for the participation fee. Oh,
So there's one participation fee,
If they're selling one item, I mean, if there be one.
yeah, 2 booths? Is that what they normally get?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I thought they only get one booth because of the location in the new park.
Well, they get to pick the location, but they normally take 2 spaces.
But I thought it was only one space because it was in between the trees. It's not considered two booths. They just had one spot.
It
One-
takes up 2 spaces.
But we
It's
based
a
our
big
spots on dimensions.
You know, the spots are like 20 foot long or something like that, or whatever.
It's like
But it is only
10
one
feet by
spot.
14 feet, I think.
So
There's
And-
only 2 spaces.
And then the electricity is per space or?
Is it per space or just if you want one hooked up?
How much they're plugging in.
Oh, okay.
They
Yeah,
don't use electricity, they just use it for lights.
correct. I mean, we wouldn't have to charge you for 2 if they were only using like 2 or 3 cords and going to one box.
Okay. So you may have one electricity, 2 space, and then 1 participation. You know,
So we're talking about $650.
And in my mind, and I'll just say this, and, you know, we can do whatever, but we don't get a rate discount. SE&D doesn't, yeah, they just charge us. In my mind, if a 501(c) comes to us and they want a booth or space or whatever, then we would say, okay, the going rate for a for-profit vendor is XYZ. For a 501(c) nonprofit, we're going to do 50% discount or something. The electricity, they can do that, or they can do it, or whatever they charge that. The participation fee, you know, I don't mind if we give a 50% discount on that. If council wants to say 100%, but it has to be across the board to everybody, all. I think the only thing that we need to be careful of with 501(c)s and saying any 501(c) is we may have some come in from, I'll say, Florence, Charleston, North Carolina, Georgia, who knows? And I think it needs to be, if we're gonna give you a discount, it's gotta be a local, either Irmo or School District 5, but something in this area. And something that their money is gonna go to this area, not to somewhere else. And that would be the criteria. And it would be registered in South Carolina, Attorney General, or Secretary of State, so that they are registered in South Carolina. And I would write up something like that and put it on the next agenda as a policy. And I would rather write it up, send it to the Oakstreet Commission, that we look at it, make some whatever recommendations, then come back to us, and then we'd say, okay, this is what it's going to be. And then it's done. And I think if anybody walks into us, then we can play the same thing with them down the road. But that's just where I'm at, and that's why this is on the table. So, any more?
Yes, as the only woman up here, everything you just said, I disagree with. They are a 501(c). I do think that any charitable organization that gives money to this town or District 5 area, I think they do deserve a discounted rate. Otherwise, as God-fearing people, we're not acting that way. So I think they do deserve a discounted rate. We
That's
would,
what I was saying, we'd have to do that.
I haven't finished, excuse me, I'm female, excuse me. We wouldn't have this event were it not for this group of women. Before any of us got out here, these women were at Seven Oaks Park or that area putting on the Oprah's Park. Undoubtedly y'all named it too, which is a wonderful thing. Anyway, they deserve a little more respect than we're giving them. Or perhaps we could have done this a little differently and say, you know, could you give us $100? We could have done this in little steps rather than like a bull in a china cabinet and hit them all with this at one time. They only made $6,000 last year. I heard all of the charities that received money. Every one of them was not only deserving, that's people that I would give money and do give money to. So I'm in full agreement with them. It's their strut. It got so big they couldn't handle it by themselves. I think then it got so big that we darn near couldn't handle it. It's back now to a normal size, but I still think they deserve the respect for years of doing this on their own. To build a library, to build a gazebo. They always had a purpose or a function in mind for the benefit of this town. And I think they deserve to be thanked and not charged money. My thought on that?
Anybody else?
I just want to weigh in myself. I can tell you that when I campaigned, now I'm not sure if anyone knows out in the audience, but I'm relatively new to Irmo. I've been here just a couple years. And I ran primarily because of the problems associated with the Okra Strut and the fact that the town, year after year after year, was giving money for a losing cause to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. And thankfully, it seems like those days are in the past. I can tell you that I am all for fairness because that's what we need to be here for. We need to be fair. We need to treat each organization, each business in a fair way when we're talking about the strut. Quite frankly, I would like to get the strut to a point where we can give it off to someone, just as you have done to the town. This has been a tremendous burden to the town. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars. Over 3 years, I believe the dollar amount was $75,000. That's not fair to the taxpayers for a day and a half festival. 3 years, 75,000. It doesn't seem right. And all I would like to see is a fair way that everyone is treated fairly. Honestly, if you wanted the strut back, I'd be all in favor of giving you the strut back. Because I can tell you that this council, probably 80% of the minutes of the meetings, 80% of them have had discussions about the strut. Can you imagine, for a day and a half festival, 80% of the council minutes of meetings have had issues with the strut? It's crazy to me. When I was on the campaign trail, so many people said, you got to do something about it. You got to do something about it. I've been here for 2 years. I was voted in over people who had been on this council for over 20 years. People wanted change. Whether or not you agree that things should be fair, I don't know how you can't agree with that. It was yours. I understand that. And I think what the mayor is proposing is a discounted rate. I can tell you that I went around to many, many vendors that day, and they would have been happy making 5% of what you folks made. Most of them lost money on that day. It was raining. I know I'm not going to make a lot of people happy, but I can tell you that I want it to be fair and equitable for everyone who participates. That's all.
Is it possible for us to?
Excuse me, we're not seeing the audience participation right now.
Okay, thank you.
Me too.
No.
Going good?
Well, where do I start? I understand the liability issues that you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, and the ordinance that you're proposing, the way I'm reading it and what you got on the agenda, is to totally delete section 2-67, which is the entire ordinance that we passed back in May 19th, 2015 with the old council. Now, I think the right thing to do is we want to rescind that, that ordinance that we passed back in May, not delete it, because you still have the ordinance out there, and there'll be nothing in there. But I think the proper thing would be to do is to rescind it, similar to what the Republicans want to do with Obamacare, they want to rescind it. The other issue is, Mr. Pouliot, you say you're new to the town, that you've only been around for a couple of years. You keep spouting that nonsense that Hardy was telling you about losing thousands of dollars over the last 3 years. This festival has been going on for 42 years or more. And I guarantee you that it's never lost $75,000, never cost the taxpayers $75,000. But you continue to spout that nonsense that the mayor has been telling you and let you feed that nonsense through. And that's okay. Maybe one day you'll figure it out that maybe it's not true, that the strut may have not made a profit in the sense of making a big profit as a point of, as a profit center for the town. But as far as losing thousands of dollars like you're claiming, it's totally nonsense.
That is not nonsense, that's public
Are you yelling at me?
record.
Are you yelling at me, Mr. Pouliot? Okay, it's total nonsense. This council passed an ordinance last year because of the exact same situation we're at right now. We were trying to figure out, the Women's Club had an agreement and had a contract with the town that was ratified back with an old council back in 1980. And and the mayor seems to be hell-bent on saying that, oh, this contract is no longer valid anymore, so we're going to do away with it. Well, if that's the case, we need to go back and look at the franchise agreements we got with SC&G and the telephone company and do away with all those contracts, because those were passed back in 1970s or whatever, and say that those are no longer valid. But the bottom line is, the Women's Club, we passed this ordinance last year to protect the interests of the Women's Club. Not to say that they're trying to get over on us or get something for nothing. The Women's Club is a vital part of the Okra Strut Festival. And if you want to kill the Okra Strut, like you're doing now, Mr. Mayor, why don't you just simply rescind this ordinance and just do away with the Okra Strut at all? That'd be a lot simpler than to pick and piecemeal it across the board. It seems like every ordinance that you lost on, you want to go back and revisit it, and that's just nonsense. And this is another one of those nonsense ordinances that you're talking about. So, hey, it's up to you. I mean, you do what you want to do, but I'd be more inclined to rescind this ordinance than to delete the section out of it and then try to piecemeal it back in. If we don't get sued by the ladies' club.
As far as rescinding,
Isn't it his turn?
I think you're through.
Is it
you
his turn?
want to go? Okay, go ahead. Go. Oh, I didn't think you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to defend Mr. Pouliot. I've been a friend of the former mayor of Irmo since I landed in this town in 1986. And the town of Irmo has put money into the Okra Strut every year since I've lived here. Now, if that didn't come from the taxpayers, I don't know where the money came from.
Where did they put it?
No, I'm gonna
Where did they put it?
let Julius finish.
You're just making a statement.
I'm making a statement just like you made a statement saying Mr.
There's
Pouliot
no
didn't
facts
know what he was
behind
talking
it.
about.
Barry,
He doesn't.
A mayor
I'm gonna let Julius finish.
who I believe was a trustworthy, fine Christian gentleman, told me in confidence, which I'm now repeating now, how much money the Okra Strut had been losing over the years. And I believe my younger cohort, Miss Condom over there, you're not the oldest one, will also agree, having been on council longer than we have, that the town of Irmo has put money back into the Okra Strut when it lost money. Because one group is making money, they're doing a dadgum good job if they're making money. I applaud them. But somebody and somewhere in the operation, the money was being sidestepped somehow, and the town had to take up the slack. So I think at least my take on this is a 501c3 organization, we have one. If others come, that's what I think. I'm just thinking my personal thoughts here. The mayor's trying to protect the town in that respect. I don't think he's trying to pull the rug out from under the Lake Murray Women's Club.
No, and I would agree that all I believe we're trying to do here is just make it fair across the board.
And I believe we have an attorney on the payroll here who could advise us if that could possibly happen and how it could hurt the town if it did happen, if we denied other 501c3 organizations the same privileges and benefits.
I did not look into that particular issue in advance of tonight's meeting. That said, I would say that there has been a exchange of consideration between the town and the women's club, which might limit any liability that might be sought from. There's been a quid pro quo, and so I don't know whether or not there would be any liability for another 501c3 coming in and saying you're treating this entity differently than another, because those other entities didn't give the town of Irmo anything. So does that answer your question? That's the best I can do with what I've got here right now.
Thank you. And that's all I've got to say about that.
Okay.
So there's no liability issues.
That's what he's saying.
Well, he's saying let's look at it, but I'm going to go back to some stuff that was mentioned, and Bob, you can probably address this. I hate to do this to you. But there is a line item on the town audit of the orchestra fund that shows a negative balance or a positive. Can you give us that balance for the last 10 years, 20 years? I don't know. 10, 20, not now, but in the next couple of weeks. Can you go back through and just say, this year, boom, this year, boom, this year, boom, this year, boom. Show us that line item. I think that will answer
Put
the
this
question.
item to bed once and for all.
And I've looked at that for years, and it's always been a negative, and it's always been said that the way we do our books and they do their books and all this stuff, and that could be argued for 1 year. But if you look at it for 20 years, and it's made money, somewhere in there it's going to have a positive balance. Somewhere in there, it's either going to have a positive or negative. And if it's had a negative 20 years, then that tells you you ain't made money in 20 years.
Would you also
I've got the floor, and I'm
would you
going
also
to
do that? Would you
come back to a later
please
time.
give us the total budget, not just a line item? I want to see the total budget.
All I want to see is the end result. That's it. If you want
I
something
want
else,
to see the total budget. So when
All right.
there's end result, give us the total budget.
the other thing, as far as the 1980 contract being not valid, I have no clue what you're talking about. I never said I wanted to avoid that contract. In fact, I said everything was already in that contract. So as far as I'm concerned, it is a semi-halfway valid contract. I don't know. As far as I understand too, any council can vote down anything any other council did in years previous. So if we want to continue to accept that contract, we can. If we ever want to vote it down, it's a done issue. That's a different story, because I never said anything about not validating it. As far as the this agenda, this item here, 1504, section 267, whether we rescind it or whether we delete it, I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference in my mind one way or the other. The end result is you erased it. The line item 267 is still in the books for future use. It just has nothing attached to it. And as far as we did it, or it was done to protect the interests of the women's club, if I understand the liability or the responsibility of the elected official, we're elected to protect the interests of the Irmo taxpayer, not a 501(c)(3). That would be somebody else's, but I agree, you're probably correct. That's what they did it for. Not to protect the town's interests, but to protect somebody else's. So that's another reason why I think we should get rid of it. As far as the orchestra having money, For years, the town has gave it alcohol tax dollars, which come to us and can be used to give to a related thing, can be used for some other categories. We can put that money aside and save it to buy green space, to buy land for parks, to do some other items. But we have for years given it to the Oak Strut. If you look at all that money, that's kind of where the losses were covered up by that there. If that dollars hadn't been going into it, it would have been a whole long time ago. Last year we gave it $5,600, I think, in alcohol tax dollars. The year before that we gave it 21. It varies, and it varies as to how much we vote to give it out of that dollar amount. But that is where the funds to keep it alive have come from for years. Nothing wrong with that. We didn't have, but if you went back and looked at that budget, and I've got copies, and I'll be glad to give everybody here one. I think our previous town administrator did a thing not too many years ago, and it went back to, I think it was 1990, 1991, something like that, and went from there up to 2006, 7, or 8, I can't remember, and showed exactly how much the extra made, what the end result was, where the money came from. Two things caused a lot of the problem. One was the fee that we paid for the administrator, which used to be $18,000 and then it was 12. And one was if we didn't have the alcohol tax money, it would have been, the alcohol tax money saved it, the management fee caused it. Everything else.
But the alcohol tax money should have gone back into the courts and stayed there.
No.
It could
No, it's
have,
supposed to be for tourist-related events.
that's one of the things you need to.
Right.
You
And
can
that's
also
what we
save it.
got.
Tourist-related events is yours.
You can also save it, use it for parks. You can use it to buy land. You can use it for
Parks.
other stuff.
Do you really think we need another park?
No.
Let me write this down.
That money could have been saved and used to buy land. So the tourist land is not the only thing, but it is one of the few. There's a list of probably 12 things, and a lot of them have nothing to do with our town. Beach nourishment, beach, whatever.
Reimbursement of
Things
beach.
can't be done. But there are probably 3 or 4 things in there that we can use for bicycle paths, walking paths, land for parks.
Park.
So
Parks,
there's
he said again.
other.
So when Irmo gets a beach, we can use that alcohol tax money for yours.
Okay, now you said you're saying that it's not parks. Okay, I
Yeah, right.
understand what you're saying about the meetings and the amount of time devoted to it, and you're right. We spent way too much time. However, things changed. And this past year, rain and all, it was a totally different organization, management, you name it. And we did much, much better. And of course, I hope that continues. But I'm going to use a word now that's thrown around a lot, but we are messing up with the precedent. And I know some of us use that word when we want to, and then at other times we ignore it. But it's a precedent to show respect to these women and not charge them anything. I guess we're going to go against it, and fairness, whatever. I still think they deserve more consideration than anyone else. And I'll hush.
Any more comment?
Yeah, so the liability issues that you mentioned is a bunch of hooey, as told by our mayor, or our council here. The issues about us losing money every year, if you want to show a line item for us losing money, that's fine. But Bob, I want to see the total budget like you had for us at the end of 2015. We had the actual expenses and the actual revenues and stuff like that. And if you want to show us a negative budget at that point, then that's fine. But if it's for a negative amount, that's fine. But I want to see what we actually spent and what we actually brought in and what we budgeted for that. You know, I think that every time you've seen the orchestra budget I've ever seen, we've always been at or below what was budgeted for the event. And, you know, again, you know, you want to listen to all this hooey about we lost a bunch of money and we're in the red by thousands of dollars and stuff like that, and nobody can actually show it, but that's fine. You know, you can say all you want. But, you know, when you don't have the facts in front of you and you want to say stuff like that, say it. That's fine. And I was completely calling you wrong and point it out.
Any more discussion? in favor then of passing ordinance, and this, by the way, will take 3 readings, 1602, do so with show of hands. All opposed? And like I said, I'll be happy to draw up something, write up something, and put it on the next agenda, and we can add that to that, change it, amend it, or whatever. Next item is an approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Irmo Police Department and the Department of Social Services. Is there a motion for approval of that memorandum? Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? And
What is this for?
Bob, can
It deals with juvenile detainees.
If we take a child into emergency protective services, we call Department of Social Services to place the child, and these are the guidelines they set that we have to both agree to manage that.
And this is something we just do every
It's
year,
required
every so
by-
often?
It's required by the Department of Social Services, yes, sir.
Any more questions?
Do we make that decision to take a child out of the house, or do we have somebody from DSS come in and make that decision?
It's our decision.
Okay.
And that is like if y'all were, I'm just gonna give an example, arresting somebody, and there's nobody at home, or some kind of something going on, and you gotta do something with this young child.
It's extreme.
You can't bring them here
It's
and
extreme circumstance.
keep them, so, okay.
That's great.
Any more discussion? All in favor again of the approval of the memorandum of understanding, do so with show of hands. Next item is an approval of a mutual aid agreement with the Irmo Police Department and the Pine Ridge Police Department. Is there approval for that mutual aid agreement?
So moved.
And second.
I second.
And any discussion and all that? You can kind of tell us the same thing. We got one of them, they got one of us.
Every municipality and sheriff's department has a mutual aid agreement. If we have a disaster, this allows them to come help us and vice versa.
And we've done a lot of these.
We sent 4 officers over to Forest Lake after the floods.
Any discussion? All in favor then of that approval of mutual aid agreement with the Pine Ridge Police Department, do so with show of hands. All opposed? Next item is presentation by citizens. This is for anyone who would like to address.
Chief, do you have, we have a policy on tasers here? You know?
Yes, we do.
Can I see a copy of that?
I'll send it to you.
Thanks.
I'd like to see it too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Presentation by citizens. This is for anyone who would like to address council. Whether it's on the agenda or not on the agenda, may do so at this time. All we ask is you give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Debbie Thomas. I was here earlier to address the council on behalf of the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club. I wanted to address a couple things that I heard up here that I wanted to clarify. It seems that we're being perhaps, shall we say, blamed for okra struts in the past that haven't made any money, and I'm not real sure why we are being held responsible. I wanted to address the fact that over the past 42 years, I guess, or thereabouts, we have been able to supply to the library and to other areas in our community over $200,000. Of that money, we have taken none of it. Basically, it goes right back into the community. If you're interested in charging us fees, what that means is that money will no longer be available to go back into the community. Our scholarships, as a general rule, for example, are $750 to $1,000, depending on what we make at Okra Strut. I just want you to know that if we are being charged fees, which it seems that so many of you think is a good idea, that's going to be taking money right out of the pocket of people that we choose to serve. I don't really know how much plainer I can be than that, but I don't really understand why, as founders of the Okra Strut, we're not asking for anything special other than as founders. We're asking to be recognized as founders of the Okra Strut. We are not asking for anything special other than that. We're asking for the agreements that we have had in place since 1980, which as a contract is still valid. We're just asking that that be upheld. If you have any questions, we will be glad to answer any of them from any of you. We will be glad to submit anything that we need to submit, but we are just asking that our agreement be upheld. Thank you. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Ms. Thompson, I'm glad you said what you did. You had nothing to do with any problems with the Okra Strut. If that was implied, that was a mistake, because I've never heard anything about any problem. You know, it wasn't you at all. So I apologize for that.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, then I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Anybody got a stoop for me? I'm Sherry Selke. I live in Irmo. I'm a neighbor of our mayor. I'm also a member of the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club, and I believe that the way we have functioned as a group in the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club in relationship to the Okra Strut absolutely had to do with the contractual agreement that was made between the city and the women's group when it was passed over to the city. All the growing pains of the Okra Strut, it just happened that way. Is $600 and some going to kill us? No. But I do think the point is that was part of our original contract. And if Irmo does not honor their contracts, that doesn't bode well. That was a contractual agreement between the ladies group and the town. And what the town got out of it, what we got out of it was what we wanted, to build a library. The fact that it was so successful was a God-given gift. It brought notoriety to our community. It brought hundreds of thousands of people to our community. The rest of it lays on the town. I feel like we're finally there. We're different in that we're not asking to be treated special because we're a special 401 or 501c corporation. We were the founders, and that was part of our agreement. And it needs to be honored, or I won't be very proud of my community in regards to that. It's that simple, and that's all I have to say.
I'm Peggy Grillett, and I'm president of the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club. My address is 304 Cross Creek Court in Columbia. I would agree with what Sherry had said. If the Okra Strut Commission and the Town Council wants to go ahead and establish some type of participation fees for not-for-profits, I think that the Lake Murray Irmo Women's Club actually does deserve to be grandfathered in underneath the original agreement, just like it has been since since 1980s. I think that we are, in that respect, I think that we do deserve that honor or respect from the event and from the town of Irmo as well. As we're partners in this event. We're putting it on together. In order to make it successful, let us move forward with this, and just keep the event the way it. Keep honoring the agreement as it was originally established. Thank you.
I'm George Glassmore, 100 Danbeck Road. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but this got to the point of almost being ridiculous, to the point that you're spending this much time debating what might be a $600 or $700 piece of revenue for the town, yet you folks are more than willing to cut loose $66,000 to remedy a subdivision that wasn't built according to the specs because a previous administration didn't catch that, and you were quick to spend $33,000 or $34,000 for the flood study over here that was discussed earlier tonight, and you're willing to spend over $2 million on a park that I never wanted to begin with, that Mr. Walker and others assured me that it would not exceed $1 million on. You're willing to throw that money away, but you're spending almost an hour here tonight debating on whether or not to collect $600 from these folks. Time is worth something, and I don't want you guys, and I don't want the town employees here bogged down in debating a $600 item. Okay? Make a decision and move on. Finally, I question, and I'm really getting tired of this ongoing debate over the years as to whether or not the Okra Strut in a given year made money or didn't. And I've addressed this before. A number of years, it seemed like a shell game was going on because at one snapshot in time, the numbers appear to indicate that the Strut either made or lost money, but then the Okra Strut managers, whoever they were, would say, well, we've got revenue for the Strut that hadn't come in yet, or we've got bills that we haven't paid yet, and all that's going to change it. And again, as the mayor said, that may change and impact that 1 year, but if you look over the course of 5 or 10 years, the numbers speak for themselves, and if you take that long snapshot, you'll know if the Okra Strut made money or not. Finally, I would question Mr. Walker's ability to determine, even with the documentation, let alone whether he accepts it or not, because he seems to have a hard time with black and white issues like that. But even if he gets the documentation, I question his ability to accurately and willingly decipher it, given his own history of being unable to understand the difference between a majority and a 2/3 vote, his ability to write good checks to the town, his ability to pay over $18,000 in taxes owed to the state, if he can't, and his multiple civil judgments that are against him for unpaid debt. If he can't manage his own finances, I don't think he's qualified to comment on town finances. Thank you.
Well, you're wrong about that, and I can comment on town finances as long as I'm sitting on this chair. But I'm willing to let you do it if you want to run for council.
Please resign, I might consider it.
Anyone else?
Could I make a comment?
Yeah, seems like, yeah.
I have never seen the agreement until I received it the other day from I guess Whit dropped it off at my house. Initially, it said 25% of the total money made in the 1980 Okra Strut would go to the ladies' women's club. And that was 25% of the entire profits of the whole Okra Strut that year. After that, it said 100% of the money generated by their booth would go to them. There's nowhere in it, ladies, I mean, I was a teacher, I read and understand what I read. There's nowhere in there that it says anything about fees. All it says is 100% of the money made will go to your club. Not that I'm saying I don't want you to get it. And also weigh in, this is the first reading. It takes 3 readings to go through. And we have been, or I have, since this was my first year on council, I have seen previous councils, everybody voted to do it, and in the next meeting, the second reading, one says do it and 4 say don't do it. So don't get upset with us, please.
No, we really welcome the exchange of positive discussion that leads to a mutual agreement to the betterment of our community. I totally agree with this gentleman that there's way too much time being spent on this. It's kind of shameful. So the sooner it gets settled, the better. What I'm saying is, this is how it has been since the beginning of that agreement. It's been our understanding, that's how we've operated, that's how the town's operated. It was discovered last year throughout the discussion that the town, in fact, had dropped the ball and not legislating or whatever you call it to put it legal on your end, and they tried to rectify that last year. It should have happened in the 80s. And if it had happened, none of this discussion would be happening. And what I'm saying is that it needs to be honored the way it's been. That was part of our original agreement. And it's just been that way. The rest of it, I mean, I kind of feel like the growing pains, we finally arrived. We have a permanent place. We're finally making money. We've addressed some real strong issues. We've had huge growth. We even had a time when we thought we were going to have to close it. But the town spoke and said, we want this event. And we want a permanent place for this event. So let us not blow it by, you know, being ugly with each other, and let's do the positive things that keep this being a good event for the community, because it was at one time the #1 festival in the state. Irmo, South Carolina. Who knew Oprah would do so much? That's right. So that's all we're asking, is that it be honored. And we're not asking to be treated special because we're a special nonprofit group. We're asking to be treated special because we're the founders of this festival. That's all.
It's a precedent that's been honored since 1980.
Anyone else? Seeing none, no executive session is on here. Next item is adjournment. Is there a motion for adjournment? Make a motion. And a second. All in favor of being adjourned? Aye.